Have you ever wondered what it takes to land an interview at tech giants like Amazon Web Services or AWS and successfully crack it? Amazon is known to keep a very high hiring bar, and its interview process is designed to be peculiar and very unique. As I interviewed at AWS recently, I invested a good amount of time preparing for interviews. As a result, I gained better understanding about the overall interview process and along the way devised some strategies to effectively prepare for it. I also discovered some techniques that helped me succeed across multiple interviews. In this video, I want to share with you those strategies, a winning mindset, and mechanism that can possibly help you land a job at AWS. Well, if you are new to the channel, I am Deepanshu with over 18 years of experience in cloud. On this channel, I strive to bring technology-centric content that can help you learn cloud and build a better career in technology. If that sounds like fun, do subscribe to the channel, and I wish you happy learning and a great career in IT. AWS is constantly looking to hire great people. And if you bring good skills and have an obsession to help customers using technology, AWS could be a great place to work at. If you remain until the end of this video, these few minutes would be sufficient to know everything essential about interviewing process at AWS and how to effectively prepare to succeed. From identifying the right role to the application process to devising interview strategies, and everything in between will be shared here. This topic is crucial, so I've consolidated all my learnings from my AWS interviews into a clear 5-step structure, and here is how it looks. Note, this is a typical interview process for all tech roles at AWS. Here, we begin at application stage, where I will share an effective approach to applying at AWS that helps you stand out. Next, we'll talk about the assessment stage and sharing my experience in preparing for that. Then, we move to the phone screening stage and what to expect there. Next stage is super important, so we will talk about the famous loop that typically has 5 rounds of interviews and is by far the most talked about mechanism when it comes to interviewing at AWS. So stay tuned as I share my personal experience preparing for loop and a strategy that helped me clear them. Lastly, what to expect post-interviews. So before we get to discussing interview process, a key message for you. While Amazon maintains very high standard for hiring, it might make people believe that the hiring process would be very challenging, intimidating, and adversarial. You might think interviewers are going to throw tricky questions at you to make you stumble. I must say you are absolutely wrong. From my personal experience, I have found all my interviewers to be very supportive, accommodative, and a bunch of people who are deeply rooting for me to succeed in my interviews. So I had say approach your AWS interviews with a very positive mindset. And with that, let's dive deeper into the interview process itself. In the process of exploring the role, first and foremost, I needed to start searching the right role that matches my experience, technology skills, and future ambitions. You have to do the same. And don't underestimate this step, as you need to have clarity why you are choosing one role over the other. There should be no confusion. Absolutely. Now, 2 ways I recommend as you're exploring that right role. One, by visiting AWS career page, and second one is LinkedIn. I would prefer career page over LinkedIn for the reason that it provides you with the most updated view of the hirings. Once you have identified that right role, next step would have obviously been to apply quickly, right? As you're watching this video, I would say don't do that just yet. Applying to AWS is more than just submitting a resume. You need to carefully read and understand the job description and the responsibilities of the role, and then research about what team, region, specialty, and industry the role is aligned to. And with that understanding, tailor and customize your CV specifically for that role. It'll help you position yourself to the recruitment and the hiring team more effectively. I did the same, and afterward, I sought a referral from a friend at AWS as we were ex-colleagues. So if you can consider reaching out to somebody you know and have worked with in past to make a referral for you, it increases your chances to get early feedback on your CV from them and provides you with opportunity to make any adjustments before it gets any further in the interview process. Remember, Objective is to present yourself in the best possible manner. So now your application is submitted either through a referral or you applied directly. Now, if the hiring team finds your skills and experiences to be a good fit and meeting expectations for the role, you will hear positively from the recruitment team. You are now under consideration for the role and will mostly move to the next steps in the process. Next would be a recruitment call. To begin with the process, you may hear from recruitment asking to set up a call. It is a preliminary call and doesn't count towards the actual interview rounds. The objective for the call is to hear about your interest, answer any questions that you might have about the role to set you well for the forthcoming conversations. Now, AWS has a very structured interview process where you would go typically through anywhere between 5 to 7 rounds of interviews. One of the most important aspects of interviewing at Amazon are understanding their leadership principles. These are a set of 14 core values that define Amazon's culture and guides Amazonians in their day-to-day jobs. It is just one of the things that makes Amazon peculiar, and you must read and familiarize yourself with the leadership principles. For a deeper understanding of these principles, I would recommend you watching this YouTube playlist from Amazon that goes deeper into each leadership principle and provides internal perspective. I've included the link in the description box, so use that. Now you need to understand what AWS is after and think about how you have demonstrated some of these leadership principles in your past jobs. From the interview perspective, you will be observed based on how you have demonstrated some of these leadership principles. And with that, let's move on. AWS interview process is as much important to the company as it is to you. It is a time and effort investment for not just your end, but as well as for the recruitment and the rest of the hiring team at AWS. While they may receive hundreds of applications for a given role, they only want to proceed further with those who bring what it takes to succeed in the role, and that is where the online assessment comes into the picture. So depending on your role and position, you may be asked to complete an assessment. An assessment is a mechanism designed to assess all candidates who are currently under consideration for a given role. It is done online and can typically take about an hour for the candidate to finish it. If you look at it, it serves well for the candidate as well as AWS to know about any gaps early in the process. Hence, only those who do well in assessment are moved to formal interviews. So how is online assessment structured? How can you prepare for that? Let's dive in. As part of the assessment, you are typically measured on 2 areas. One being the work style assessment and second being work sample simulation. Let us talk about work style assessment first. This is centered around Amazon's peculiar culture and leadership principles. AWS wants to know more about your working style. For an example, you will be asked to choose which statement represents your work style. One, I like for things to be clearly structured, or the other, I look forward to the opportunity to learn new things. Only advice I would have is to familiarize yourself with leadership principles, as it would help you develop a thought process about what matters. It wouldn't be appropriate for me to share as to how many questions would there be, but it would take somewhere around 10 to 20 minutes for you to finish that. Next, let's move on to the work sample simulations. Depending on your position, you will be asked to complete some virtual tasks that an Amazonian faces in their day-to-day job in a similar role. This is your opportunity to demonstrate your problem solving, prioritization, and interpersonal skills. You will also be assessed on how you attend to a given problem and progressively work to solve that. In terms of time, it would typically take 20 to 60 minutes to complete this. And additionally, you are also advised to brush up your technology skills, as you may get tested on those as well. Now the assessment is done. What is next? For those who didn't clear the assessment, would be filtered out, and you can expect to be notified that you are not in consideration anymore. And for those who do well, a recruiter will move you forward to the next steps, which is a phone screening. Assessment is an important step in the hiring process, so I would encourage you to take time to prepare well for your assessment. Phone screening is an hour-long virtual interview. It is conducted typically by hiring manager, but if not, you may well have a member of the team interviewing you. This is absolutely about covering your experiences, situations and challenges that you have faced in past, and how did you handle all those. My advice is to practice answering these behavioral and situational questions in the STAR format. Additionally, you can expect some technical conversations for sure. So remember, this is your avenue to prove your tech skills and your alignment with leadership principles by sharing your experiences and challenges in a structured manner. Remember, AWS is a data-driven company, so as much as possible, provide metrics that you influenced. For example, rather than saying that I implemented an audit automation solution, you should say that I implemented an audit automation solution that helped us reduce audit time from 40 hours to less than 10 hours every month. And remember to share recent examples whenever possible. While it is not common, but you may also be asked to take a second round of interview at this phone screening stage. But without worrying about how many, I would advise you to focus on brushing up technical skills, keep some behavioral situations ready, and research about AWS as a company. AWS is a customer-obsessed company. Candidate is a customer, and your experience as a candidate throughout the interview matters to the company. As such, AWS strives to get back to you within 2 business days after your 4 interviews are over. Now, let us say you didn't hear positively, don't worry. It is not the end of the world, and I would advise you to close any gaps that you identified during the process, and you can consider another role in future. But well, if you have cleared phone screening with positive outcome, you will be moved to the final rounds of interviews, famously called as Loop. We'll talk about that next. Loop is a famous term in context of Amazon and is your final round of interviews for the role. This is a series of 5 to 6 interviews that are done over the period of 1 to 2 days, depending on how you prefer and the availability of interviewers. This series of interviews are in-depth conversations designed to evaluate your fit to both the role and the company culture. So every interview is 1 hour long, and here is how it works. You will meet with a mix of topic experts, future colleagues, and with somebody who is famously called as a bar raiser. Bar raiser is an experienced Amazon employee that ensures every hiring is done keeping the long-term vision in mind rather than just the immediate needs of the role. You can think of it as a third party to ensure that every candidate gets an open, accurate, and fair interview experience throughout the process. Line of questions across all Loop interviews are behavioral and situational questions. A hypothetical situational question could very well be, tell me about a time you failed. What impact did it have? And what did you learn from this experience? As you may realize, question is focused around your failures. At AWS, we believe that failure is a necessary part of innovation. So what matters is what you learned from that failure. Now, how do you prepare for your Loop interview? For the Loop, it is important that you think about your past successes and failures in relation to Amazon's leadership principles. Think about a situation where you failed. So gather as much data points for these situations and prepare to discuss them in the STAR format. If you were to follow STAR for any given past experience, write down a crisp note to define the situation, then explain the task that you had at hand. In action, you have to in details explain what actions did you take to address that situation. Let me share how I prepared for this, and I would recommend the similar approach as it indeed worked for me. So you create an Excel in which one sheet represents one leadership principle. So you would be having 14 sheets in your workbook. Now you have to think about all your past experiences and try to find situations where your actions demonstrated one or more leadership principles. I suggest you have 2 to 4 well-documented examples for each leadership principle. These need not be distinct, as one situation can demonstrate more than one leadership principle. Now, having this Excel would help you draw a neural graph of examples so you can pull them out when needed during your interviews. Also, it is super important to practice your responses a few times beforehand. If you're not very familiar with interviewing in STAR format, I would highly recommend answering and recording yourself on a mobile. Use that to make improvements, and take it from me that you would gain much more comfort and develop control in your speaking. As I said, AWS wants that you have the best experience throughout your interviews. So keep in mind that while there is enough tension or nervousness propelling in your mind, every interviewer would be very supportive and would do their best to make you feel comfortable. Remember that they want you to succeed, so prepare to effectively share data points with every example that you discuss. Remember, AWS is a data-driven company. Another key advice I have is that you have to focus more on I than we. It essentially means that you have to share what contribution did you make specifically in the scenario that you're discussing. Interview at AWS is an opportunity to sell yourself, so tap on that. Now, in terms of the timeline, you may get to set up your interviews in one day or split them over 2 days. It would depend on your preference and as well as the availability of interviewers, as I said earlier. Personally, I chose to split them over 2 days, but you may prefer otherwise. I would also advise that you research your interviewers over LinkedIn, prepare some questions to ask based on information that you gather. It would surely help you gain better understanding of the role, but also demonstrate that you are curious about the role. Once you have completed AWS's loop round, you have reached a significant milestone in a rigorous interview process. Regardless of the outcome, finishing the loop itself is an accomplishment and demonstrates your ability to navigate one of the most challenging interview formats in the tech industry. After the interviews, the hiring team would need some time to come together and discuss your performance and get to final decision. Remember, AWS strives to get back to all candidates with a final decision within 5 business days. If the feedback is positive and aligned, you can expect to hear from the recruiter with the good news. After this point, as it leads to the offer and negotiations, it wouldn't be appropriate for us to discuss it here. Now, let me also provide you with some insights that is coming in from Amazon's recruitment team themselves. I'm sharing a link in the description box that provides you an insight from Amazon's recruiter themselves as to how should you go about preparing for your interviews and things to keep in mind. So that brings us towards the end of this video. I hope you found this content helpful and I wish you all the very best in your interview journey at AWS.